Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Global Conversations. Today, we're actually going to be talking about something about authenticity of people within meetings, and of course, themselves, especially when it comes to the neurodiverse populations. First, let me speak with, or let me have a heartfelt bienvenue. Oh my God, I can't even speak French today, even though I know it. Bienvenue de Fran and Delhoume, mastermind in the realm of neurodiversity and inclusion. She's got a master's of science from HEC Montreal and vast experience from Fran giving her a rich knowledge to the table. On advocating for an inclusive society, Fran's unique perspective on the diversity of the human mind, with her dynamic approach and dedication to embracing different dimensions of thinking, with undoubtedly sparking for us a captivating dialogue. And joining Fran is Mélissa St. Louis. With her innovative strategies and dedication to fostering inclusive environments, Mélissa is transforming how we support neurodiversity in the workplace. Her professional journey reflects a commitment to nurturing spaces where authenticity thrives and everyone has the opportunity to shine. Together, they're part of Nuance, an initiative that weaves inclusion into the fabric of organizational culture. As we embark on this journey through the intricacies of inclusive meetings, the nuances of being diverse, and the vibrant approach that towards these concepts, we invite you to bring your experiences and questions and ideas into this mosaic of global conversation. So grab your café, préparez-vous pour un chance riche and enriching. So for both of them, this is the Global Conversations webcast, reaching hearts and minds across the spectrum. Let the conversation commence. As I think they want to say commence, but we can say commence and commence, same thing. So welcome, welcome Mélissa et Fran. Comment ça va?
Thank you. Très bien, et toi?
Bien, merci. I know this is an English podcast, but I'm going to just throw in my limited French, of course. And today, just for today, le cartel à la Montréal.
Oh,
yeah. So I wanted to bring that in there, so make everyone feel at home. So to the both of you, usually I like to start our conversations with a little bit of fun, knowing who you all are, right? And giving the audience a spectacle of who you are. So since you're first on my screen, Mélissa, tell everyone who you are and what is the one thing that is unique about you.
This was such a hard question. We had a bit of anxiety answering it because I feel like everybody's unique like everybody else,
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Everyone's unique.
That's it. I guess really what pops to mind is the fact that I have such an atypical life that fits my atypical brain, where I've done so many different things, and it's just fun how everything just like smooshes back together and ends up making sense, from studying in cinema and communication and doing my HR bachelor's degree, and then working in training where I was mobilizing my cinema knowledge, and then doing neuroinclusion with everything that I've learned in my transformational and organizational background. It's just like everything makes sense, and it's just so much fun. So I guess it's embracing the atypicalness of every sphere of my life.
Yeah. So you've been everywhere. Like I'm trying to remember this. I think it's a Johnny Cash.
I feel like I should be 60 years old with everything I've done.
Hey, you're still young and you still got a long way to go. So I'm pretty sure there's gonna be something else when you're 60 and totally thinking about how to do things differently or something like that. Who knows, right?
That's it. We'll work on ageism until we get there.
There we go. See? So there's a conversation we can talk about at another time. So for sure. Fran, what about you?
Oh wow! You just presented me in a light that was like I was impressed by my own bio that you said right now, and I was like, this is me.
Yeah.
So what about me? Same as Melissa about the uniqueness. So I will give you like a peek in my brain. This question was anxiety inducing for me too, because I was like, okay, but what is it being unique? What is uniqueness? So what I do when I'm asking this question to myself, I'm like, I have to go in a rabbit hole. I have to go and read about the concept. So this is, I think, what makes me unique. Everything will make me like dive in a rabbit hole about the concepts. And I love, 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 love to play with the concepts. I'm such a nerd. Not in everything because I'm really bad at math, but this is a cliche because nerds are not always good at math, okay? So this makes me unique, and Mélissa makes me unique too because she enables my potential every time working with her. She's such a force to be reckoned with. Oh, anyway, I just lost the expression, but it's just this person who makes me enable my own potential. So I guess my uniqueness relies also on Mélissa and this intersection that we have together.
Yeah,
and right back at you. You make me a better person every day.
So I want to know specifically, how did you two meet? Because I don't think even in our initial conversation we talked about that. So how did you two meet?
Mélissa,
want me to go? Okay. Yeah. It was someone that we knew, a common person that we knew that said, well, I think you guys should talk together. So we had a three-way conversation that day, and we just like kept on talking and talking. And since then, we had the podcast Neurodiverse that went on for a full year, and we kept on collaborating on different projects. We were in a collaborative and corporate situationship, let's say, where after a certain point, we were like, you know what, we collaborate so much and we have so much fun together, and we really enable each other's strengths that we decided to get corporatively married and incorporate together under Nuance. So
we made it official.
That's it.
So where's the ring?
We have fidget.
I don't know. Yeah, usually I have my elastic to play with because fidget toy is one of our love language, and I don't know what I did with my elastic this morning. This is so unusual for me. I'm gonna function with my tabouret with my stool moving. This is my solution right now. So I hope I won't like get too dizzy with my bougeotte.
No, that's great to hear. I mean, it's, we all come together one way or another through relationships with people and stuff, and that's critical, especially in the work that all of us do, right? When you build those relationships with people, you find those bonds, those connections, and that's exactly how I found the two of you, right? It was kind of random. It was like, I'm looking up. First, I was looking up, who's from Quebec? Who can I speak with about equity inclusion from a Quebec perspective? And then it was, I found a whole bunch of people, but then I'm looking at the two of you, and I'm like, these two are cool. Let's have them on my podcast. So why not, right? I mean, there's, I'm sure there's a lot of people I have respect for, like Jean Tep from CBC Radio Canada, and what's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I see his face, but anyway.
It's okay. I have a lot of compassion for you right now because I forget everybody.
Oh, I know. But the thing is, I don't want to say I'm old, but still, I know I'm older than the both of you, but even if my memory is just gone. But anyway, so definitely, I want to get into now the heart of the conversation here. And Fran, I'm going to start with you here.
Okay.
So many organizations talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, but neuroinclusion can sometimes feel a bit newer to a lot of people, especially doing this work. So I know I've had a conversation about what neurodiversity is. Let's unpack that and start talking about it in practical terms for our audience. What do you mean by neuroinclusion? And Melissa, you can chime in if you want to add anything.
But you know what? I'm not really disciplined in life, so I will pass the puck to Mélissa because I know she has something to start with that will put the basis about this conversation. It's really important, but it's not because I don't want to follow your instructions. I'm just not
disciplined. There's no instructions here.
I know, I'm teasing you.
It's okay. Okay, Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, because when we're reading this question, it is true that it does feel like it's something new. However, when we look at equity, diversity, and inclusion, it is based on all the social movement that were through the different eras in the past century, and neurodiversity just happens to be the newest one of those social movements. So neurodiversity being as well as a social movement, a new paradigm, and just the fact that we are also different with different cognitions and different brains. So the fact that it's a new social movement brings it as being new to the table when we talk about D&I, but also the fact that there is a big difference between the language and the way that the paradigm is seen in the francophonie and the French-speaking regions, or whatever. I'm losing my words a little bit there, and the Anglo-Saxons. And this brings sometimes some dissonance in between the both of them. And being here in Quebec, you're kind of caught in between both of them, where you're trying to juggle the French documentation, which is not easily and always available in great quality, where there's a lot more research done in English. So trying to get the documentation and trying to verbalize and translate this in French and make this available here in Quebec is part of where, when we give training in, let's say in Ontario, or English speaking folks, then they usually are more aware of neurodiversity. And when I give it in French, people are less aware. It feels even newer when I give my training in French. So we do see this very anecdotically coming up as well.
Fran?
See, she's brilliant. She had to start. So what I can add to this discussion, I always throw a lot of love at Melissa because I just admire her.
And she just breaks me every day. I'm like,
it's like a fun thing of mine. It's one of my new quirks in life.
Oh my
Break
gosh.
Melissa with love. What I can add to this is that there's the conversation about neurodiversity. You know, neurodiversity, just like Melissa said, it's a fact. It's like this whole continuum, this spectrum of the way our brains function. So we have this neurotypical crowd. So all the person who have a brain who functions the way they're like expected to, or what is like seen as the standard, the norm in the society we have today, because we just decided a norm, you know. And we have the neurodivergent folks. So we have a lot of conditions profiles that are discussed as being neurodivergent, and this conversation is still like moving, going on. We have new knowledge every day. Almost, I think, I know that when I wrote my thesis like a few years ago, the literature was quite sparse on that. Like, we didn't have a lot about the topic. We had stuff, but not from an experiential nor intersectional point of view. And today we have a lot more about that. So when we talk about neurodivergence, it changes. We have different profiles being recognized as such. We know that some are more like commonly seen as neurodivergent, like ADHD, autism, any like this profile, so dyslexia, dysorthography, etc. We also have a lot of discussions about what is about intelligence. So do we see giftedness as neurodivergence or not? But sometimes we have people who are gifted, so they have a high intellectual potential and they have another conditions too. And being, by example, dyslexic and gifted will give a special color to the way our brain functions. And in our environment, which are really like neuronormative, so they are based on one way or one main profile of needs and strength and functioning, we will encounter different challenges. So talking about neuroinclusion is addressing this specific issue. Can we have more neuroinclusive environment, which will welcome different way of functioning? Whether we have a neurodivergent or a neurotypical brain, we are diverse. We have different strengths, different challenges, and it varies in one's life. You know, when you have like big life events, like having a child. I don't have one, so I cannot speak about that, but I know it will induce some specific challenge, whether you have a neurotypical brain or a neurodivergent brain. So if you add that on a neurodivergent brain, even more colorful, will I say. And yeah, go.
No, I was going to say, see, you could have started off. Because you
maybe. I just felt like Melissa was saying something that was so like fundamental.
Something needs to trigger your mind in order for you to say something. I get it. But you know what? I'm going to have to put you on the spot again.
It's okay.
Now,
I'm ready.
Yeah. No worries. So since the both of you have nuance, one of the things, and Mélissa had raised it in terms of the difficulties of French, the translation, the research, and you mentioned the research is very limited and whatnot, and how do you bring that into your training and whatnot? So,
Mhm.
so as we're talking about inclusive meetings here and bringing diverse audiences in terms of language, cultural background, and neurodiversity as a whole, what are some key elements that you think that might feel unique with your experiences, especially when you're dealing with both, a Quebecois audience or a Francophonie audience in Ontario, or Franco-Ontarian audience, and then of course an English-speaking audience. So, what are those challenges or elements that you find that could be unique in that perspective?
Okay, I will be really transparent. My brain stuck on something when you said that the research was limited. I just want to correct that. It's not necessarily limited, it's really
Okay.
evolutive. So it was more
Evolution.
limited
Okay.
than it is, and we
Yeah.
need to give visibility to experiential knowledge and to
Right.
epistemic justice. It's
Okay.
really important for me because I don't want to erase the awesome people working out there in
Yeah.
research,
No,
because
of
we have a
course.
lot of material now. It's really important to me.
It's all
And
about the
this
nuance.
thing, huh?
It's all about the nuances.
Yeah, exactly. It's really important for me because this stuck in my brain, and I will try to answer your question, but I may have lost a bit of what you said.
Yeah.
My brain has a hard time listening and working with information. So I will be as
Yeah.
good as I can. You told me I
Yeah.
could be authentic.
Yeah. No, of course. Of course.
So, what makes it unique is that when we talk about neural inclusion, we have to think about accessibility in communication in a way about how brains like to communicate. So,
Right.
different person will different in different ways. And when you add on that the language diversity that we have, the bilingual context that we have here in Quebec, it's like a layer of complexity, not something necessarily complicated or bad. It's just a complexity because it's another layer on top of it. So we have to think about multimodal communication. We have to think about communication in a neuro-inclusive way and
Right.
in a language diversity way. The good thing is that many good practices will be transversal to both those
Mm-hmm.
realities.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question, Andre?
Yeah.
Was it clear? Okay.
There's part that's part of it, which is fine, and I'm sure Melissa can tag on to
Melissa
what
will
else there
save the
is.
day.
May also when we add like these different layers, when we start to talk also about accessibility and online meeting, like all the different questions when we think about, let's say, transcription. If you switch from English to French, is your software is going to be able to do transcription in both English and French in simultaneity? So yeah, this also adds when you add the layer of accessibility in the mix of it all. And I feel like when we talk about different meetings and the cultural background and also the perception of leadership within meeting, and we can also talk about it within the next question, but the way that we perceive how meetings should be to be productive and how people should behave in meeting is highly neuronormative. And somebody might have great leadership, but not in a way that is seen as being leadership. And this creates dissonance and interference in the communication, where somebody would maybe prefer to be, when Fran was talking about the multimodal communication, somebody that is more agile in written form. And you feel like to be in a meeting, to be productive, you have to be like the first one to speak real quick and fast and more loud than everybody else to be heard and to be seen. This creates problems where you don't really get the full essence and the full potential of everybody around the table on the topic, right?
Yeah. Oh, Fran's thinking of something.
Yeah.
She's like, I gotta talk. I got something.
I have two things I want to add about the uniqueness. Is that we don't have like every context has a different work culture in a way, like different organization, different work culture, but also like when we compare some different countries, some different regions, it's not the same to work in France from my experience and testimonies I had, because my family, a lot of my friends are in France, than it is here. And in Quebec, what we have is this really like casual culture. We love to chat. It's really like because I don't want to use the word family because I don't relate to that. But there's this my network. went out. Do you still hear me?
Yeah, we still hear you. Yeah,
Oh, okay, because it was lagging. Sorry, I'm sorry for that.
it's okay.
There's like
Don't worry.
jovialité, camaraderie in
Yeah,
French. I don't know if you have
yeah,
those words. So there's that, and it can imply being really fun. We have to talk.
yeah,
It's really like casual in meetings sometimes. It's hard to be more structured because it feels cold depending of your work culture. And I know that
yeah.
is something I encounter often here. And the other point I was thinking about is that we have a lot of organization now um, that have offices in different countries. And
Yeah.
we will often receive here DEI training with content that was adapted to one country. And what I
Mhm.
saw a few times now is DEI content that came from the US, and they have a really specific context about the conversation entering DEI. So when it comes here and it's a mandatory training, but it doesn't make sense and people don't relate to it, it's hard to feel empowered by the
Mhm.
discussion, to feel engaged with this conversation. So that's the 2 points I wanted to add.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear that the conversation about work culture is really like anecdotal. It's just from my experience. So it's not like a general thing necessarily.
Oh, no. And I fully 100% agree with you. And that's what lit the bulb for me when you mentioned about the different cultures and how they approach, and their different work cultures and how they approach conversations, if you will, right?
Mhm.
The one thing that I pride myself on, and I even had my last conversation with someone who was French but works in Singapore. Given that Catherine is her name, she spoke about her experience in France, and yeah, it's the same jovial attitude, right? It's very relaxed. It's when you engage in meetings like how you and us three met,
Mhm.
we had this conversation, right? Just to see who we are, what we're all about, find out about who each other's, our lives, right? And whereas with a lot of, I'm not sure about British culture, but when it comes to American culture, same thing, is
Mhm.
that it's a very get to the point, get to business, and that's it, right? So how do you so that's the question for, as I'm listening to you about, when you have different behavioral characteristics in a meeting,
Yeah.
you have to incorporate that. And with an American culture, for example, they may not accommodate to that, or at least someone who's going to be trained in EDI work, they may have the training and the experience and whatnot, but all the leaders may not be aware of this, and they definitely would need the training to take a step back and understand why it is important to have a conversation, get to know
Mm.
people, get to see who they are, and then adapt their conversation to that individual, right? Because then that's that inclusivity part of it, right? And that's what and that's where I'm coming from with that. So, and I agree with you, Fran. This is what I'm starting to see in this work, especially looking at it from a global perspective, right? And I think that's critical. Melissa, you're going to say something?
No, but then again, I feel like when we talk about, and I don't want to get too much into the legal aspect of it, but
Yeah.
the legal aspect when it comes to accessibility is quite different from province to province here in
Right.
Canada. And I am not a specialist in this exactly, but I have a friend of mine, Marc Tremblay, who is really interesting on LinkedIn if you want to follow
Mm-hmm.
him, who
Mm-hmm.
specializes in accessibility. And the fact that just by contrast, Ontario, their law for accessibility is a lot more based on the universal accessibility principle, whereas in
Mm-hmm.
Quebec here today, we are more into a reactive manner where if somebody has a situation of disability,
Mm-hmm.
then they are allowed to ask for accommodations. So instead of thinking it in an accessible way where, okay, so how do we put the ground base for everybody to have access rather than how do we make people able to ask for something creates a big difference in the dialogue. So here in Quebec, we are still in this mindset of, okay, well, do you have a diagnostic to prove that you are allowed to ask for these accommodations?
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about invisible disability and the access to diagnostic
Yeah.
here, which is very expensive, it's hard to have this conversation and to bring awareness. So even though we might have a culture where there is some sort of a warmth and joviality, as we were saying,
Yeah.
the discourse around invisible disability is still so important because of this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I agree with you there. And, and that's what I mean, I know we didn't want to talk about the legality of it, but I think there's a common theme there, especially with, I'll stay straight out with CAC, but anyway, and that's the critical part here is, there's a difference there in terms of how we approach, how the Quebecers approach that in terms of you have to prove yourself, right? And and having that is not really fair for those who are experiencing, especially like you said, the invisible disability part of it, right? Because it's not like something you have to sit there and say you have to prove it. I got to show my tests for why I have or what ailments that I have or what issue that I have or etc. It's this is who I am, right? And this is how I behave in meetings, and this is how I react in meetings or in experiences. But it's also should be the onus of the person in the organization leading the organization to accommodate them, and I believe that's the challenge here in in such as the case in Quebec. And Fran, I think you were going to say something too.
Lots of things. So it's really disorganized in my mind right now.
That's okay. That's okay.
Um, I agree with what you said. It's really important, and we have to recognize that. But I just want to add some nuance. We're not called nuance for nothing.
Yeah.
That even with a legal like frame that's more proactive, more on accessibility, we have to be careful because there's this tendency in North America in general, from what I observed. Again, my experience, my perspective, so it doesn't mean much more than that. But we tend to like see people experiencing disability and overcoming those situations like superheroes, like success stories. So we have to be careful because underdog is really, really a popular trope in US, from what I know. So it's still really present in the way we talk about disability and the way we talk about accessibility. So it was not in what you said, but I just wanted to add that nuance to the conversation. It was important.
No, exactly. And so turning on a little bit here, we had a great conversation here about the the challenges and accessibility and whatnot, and but going into the whole meetings aspect of it all, like getting to the crux of this and being and having being accessible to other people and for other people and whatnot, to be more inclusive, I should say. Looking at things like clear agendas and speaking rights. Do you think that these strategies feel like they're enough when we're navigating the intersection of language and neurodiversity? And what is there anything else you want to add to that?
Who's starting? Me?
Either one of you can.
Oh, okay. I could say that I think those two practices are really essential, but we can be more proactive. I just still want to add about this that they're essential, and even if we know they are essential, they're not used as much as they could. So first thing first, we can work on having clear agendas and following them and having speaking rights, because it's not something that's really like done everywhere. Again, my experience. But we can also think about a bit more proactivity. So Mélissa spoke about the multimodal communication. So making sure that we have different way of conveying the information, not only one way. And what we see is that there's a lot of informal ways of communicating very important information. So we have to make sure that it's clear what's essential, what's formal and important, what's casual, because some neurodivergent people won't know that that invisible rule book that we have in an organization, that you're supposed to know that what's said at the coffee machine during the break is important, just like if it was in a meeting. It's not supposed to work like that. If you ask me, sometimes I'm really confused about the way to navigate the workplace because of that. And the accessibility is really important because, again, it is underused compared to what would be the good practices of an inclusive meeting, if I dare say so. And the last point I would add is sensory considerations, because we have a different rapport to like sensory stimulation often when we are someone who is neurodivergent, not all the time, but it happens. But even beyond the neurodivergent sensorial needs, there are good practices of what is a good meeting space. Like, is it quiet enough? Do we have like all
Yeah.
of those interferences, these distractions that will happen? Is everybody working on their like computer, their phone, talking? Like, is it happening all at the same time? Do we have some good conditions? Because when you are someone who has like some sensory issues, like a really bright light, some sounds can distract you. It can be really hard to focus, and after that, it will be maybe I'm looking for the word, searching for the word reprocher. Like, we'll tell you your
Yeah.
performance was not good enough
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
it was the conditions that were
Yeah.
not adequate at all for
Yeah.
a good meeting point.
Yeah. No. Mélissa?
Also, meeting means communication. And when we talk about neuroinclusion, we talk about these different ways of communicating and thinking about the different challenges. So let's say somebody that has ADHD and has a more impulsivity, or is maybe a more verbal processor, might be somebody that talks a lot in the meeting, that takes over, that interrupts somebody else, and might seem like it's rude, or that the person is vain and is trying to take the whole space, where it really is a question of inhibition and verbal processing, where the person needs to process verbally everything that's going on in their mind to make it make sense. And on the other side of it, somebody that is more internal processor, that needs to write it down, that needs to take their time, and they can't necessarily contribute on the spot, but by being able to take away the information and process it, digest it, and come out with something a lot more rich to the conversation, even though it's not simultaneously, will not be or might not be perceived as valuable to the team, because they're not stack o tack, they're not like always answering on the spot. So being aware of understanding all these differences. And this is why in the things that we do and that Fran does so well is doing the NOVA psychometric test, where it is not to replace or to be framed with a diagnostic, but having those different types of communication preferences takes away the lens from the disability or the neurodivergence to a more mainstream and on a more of a level of equality, where everybody has a preference, and can we just acknowledge this and make the meeting go forward with knowing that somebody might be more task oriented, where somebody might be more relationship oriented, and make it go all together. Because in the end, this diversity in the meeting is what brings innovation and creativity and makes you go to the next step. But we have to be able to allow this diversity to express themselves the way that's best suited for them.
No, definitely. And, you know, as I was thinking about everything that you've both had said, and I think about myself sitting in this space, you know, here I am, you know, as Fran, you said, you know, you're sitting in your chair and you're moving around, right? Because you need something to distract you, right? And it's not a sign of nervousness. It's a sign of just the fact that that's how you process things, right? And so, and that's how I act in meetings, right? I act like I shift a lot in my meetings, right? And also too, as you mentioned, Mélissa, you know, talking about there's a task oriented versus the one who likes to write things down, processes and stuff. I'm the latter, right? Because I'm the type of person who likes to write things down and sit there, because I know that if I say something right away, I don't have all my thoughts there, right? So it's either I blurt something out and makes completely no sense, right? Or I sit back, I think about it, and then I'll say something, because, you know, and that's the thing. It's like, you know how a lot of job descriptions or in interviews, they want you to think on your feet. And even those job interviews are not prepared for people who have different learning abilities or relationship building skills and all that. So they're so general. It's only for as the both of you call it, neurotypical person, right? And so, you know, one of the things I want to ask the both of you, whoever wants to start, is what are some things, and I know we've kind of touched on it, but what are some things that you would train a leader to look out for in terms of having that diverse perspective and being inclusive of all learning types, all relationship building types, et cetera? Like, so take me and take the audience through what that would look like. Either
Okay,
one
I
of
feel
you.
like Melissa is letting me go. uh, there's this whole like business case about why diversity matters in an organization.
Right.
So I won't teach you nothing if I
Of
tell
course.
you that
Right.
with diverse people, we have diverse perspective, diverse strength, diverse challenges too. So we can have innovation, creativity, more problem solving when we reunite different people. But we
Mm-hmm.
need the inclusive practices to do so, because
Mm-hmm.
when you have people thinking in a similar way, it's really easier to communicate because you will reciprocate the way the other person communicates. When you have diversity, we need this, like, those mechanisms to make sure that, oh, okay, I understand that this person communicates maybe in a different way than mine. And I remember you saying at the beginning of this recording also that we have to adapt. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and it was really good, but sometimes we don't know. And it's okay to not know how to adapt. But
Mm-hmm.
just recognizing, okay, this person is communicating in a way that I don't relate to or makes no sense to me, or
Yeah.
even sometimes uncomfortable with, instead of seeing there like a bad intention, a lack of skill, or whatever that could be really like deficit oriented, just thinking about, okay, we are different. If we find a way to discuss this, and what do you need? What do I need? Can we communicate in a way that's really like proficient for the both of us? Or can we like just join in the middle of the conversation? We will have access to more strength together than challenges, and we
Mm-hmm.
won't be as lost in translation than we are
Mm-hmm.
when we're just focusing on, I don't understand that person and I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Again, my brain took me maybe somewhere else than your question was.
No.
Okay.
That's true. That's true. Melissa.
Okay.
Yeah, and the question was going two ways, and before I got too passionate and went into so that's why I let Fran start. But the door that you opened talking about interviews and recruitment processes and
Yeah.
understanding the difference between the different types of communication or the way that people process information is part of it. And I mean, I guess I feel like it's a good news that we actually have projects going on right now where we
Mm-hmm.
audit and see how the recruitment process is built and where the barriers of access for employment are, because
Mm-hmm.
these companies are starting to ask themselves questions about it. Because really, in the end, like I'm not a fervent fan of interview as the only way of hiring somebody, because
Mm-hmm.
technically, an interview is sales. How do you sell yourself? So if you're
Right.
not in a job for sales, how do you really are you really able to evaluate the competency of the person in front of you just by the way that they sell themselves,
Mm-hmm.
without being able to evaluate, let's say, a portfolio, doing technical tests, doing different ways of validating the knowledge and the competence of the person in front of you? And
Mm-hmm.
when we see these types of questions where yeah, or the requirements of being dynamic and team oriented, all these things that really don't mean much and sometimes don't even pertain to the job. Like if you work behind your desk, what does it mean to be dynamic? It's just because you want to have a fit with the whole team, where the whole team
Mm-hmm.
is very dynamic so everybody feels comfortable because we have this homogeneity of the fit
Yeah.
within the culture of the company? Or can we just see it as the ad culture, where we add somebody for what they are good at, even though it is different, and even though
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it might be uncomfortable, but this is what creates value in every point
Yeah.
of view. So yeah, so it's shifting this mindset and seeing all these cultural artifacts that we know within the companies and see them for what they are. Are they comfort, like little blankets where we go to work and we feel comfortable in it?
Mm-hmm.
And do they create barriers for people that might act and react differently, where if we just take the time to communicate and understand that the needs are different, we can get somewhere that's different, but that's also
Mm-hmm.
very nice.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. And so let's tie this all in as what we talked about, neuroinclusion, neurodiversity, and inclusive meetings here. So looking to the future here, what do you see in your crystal ball of what a perfect organization will look like in the future when it comes to all those aspects, and and having that, and also not only the organization culture as a whole, but also its workforce and society, and et cetera. So what do you envision, and would you like to see? What's your dream?
Are we in a good day when it comes to faith in humanity, or not today? Depends where we're at.
I
Well,
had
you
a
tell
good
me.
night of sleep.
Okay, so
Oh, I had an amazing sleep. So so I'm gonna
Because
put
of that,
you.
because of this good night of sleep, I have a bit more faith than some other days today. So I'm
Okay.
in an optimistic mood right now.
Okay.
No, but it's important because some days I'm really like discouraged by what I see
Yeah.
out there. The political world, the media world. I'm scared most of the time. Like I
Hmm.
will be really honest with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, it's scary. It's really scary. And I have a lot of privileges. And I'm scared, so I cannot imagine for a lot of people who don't have the same privileges as me. So I will use mine as much as I can to do a difference. But
Yeah.
sometimes I'm not sure if I'm working on the right, like, on the right place. Anyway, anyhow, I will stay focused on the matter of the topic today because I don't want to get in this
Yeah.
philosophical discussion. And I will use what we just went through today together, and I will use it also as a thank you, Andre, because I think it's a really good example. I use my experience as an artifact to analyze the world
Yeah.
around me,
Hmm.
and me, asking for feedback after every question, me being anxious about, oh, did I
Hmm.
answer right? I think this is a really like visible legacy of my professional life because I
Hmm.
always had to experiment those moments where I was always like à côté de la plaque, we say in
Hmm.
French, like
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, I was not where I was supposed to be, and you still let me like go through my ideas. We were not maybe always on point, but you welcomed me and I answered with a lot of
Hmm.
kindness, and
Hmm.
you were inclusive towards that. And you were like, you know what, let's go on an adventure on this podcast. And
Yeah.
this, I think, will allow for a lot of innovation. If I stay on the script, it can be really like interesting for the questions, but it won't be authentic, and we won't go anywhere else. So using this as an example, this is what I wish in
Hmm.
workplaces and in society. Can we accept that we don't know what we don't know, and accept that it's not a threat to our ego to not
Hmm.
know, and just to like really connect with each other by being kind, by being curious, by listening to what you're telling me makes no sense to me and my perspective, but it's valid because it's your life and it's true.
Hmm.
That's it. Two things can be true at the same time. So this is what I wish, and in my optimistic mood for the future.
And good sleep.
And good sleep, because this is really rare with me. So
Yeah. No, very well said, Fran. I really, number one, I really appreciate your compliment there. And this is what I try to do, in terms of, letting people be who they are. I don't care if the question's answered. It's more about what in your mind feels like the right answer should be, and or what could be, right? Because then, if we stick on script, it becomes, even for me, it becomes boring, right? Like if it's like, oh, here's one question, here's the answer, you know what I mean? No. That's what I like to see in these conversations. Even in the workplace, same thing, is you be yourself. And that's the important part. And I know that I'm sure Melissa's got some of her thoughts, even though she's in this kind of different headspace.
No, I just want to do a quick parenthesis because I just find it funny when we had the podcast, it was such like a catharsis where I feel like every time I was in meetings, when I was talking with people, I felt like nobody could really understand me, because I feel like when I try to talk, there's so much noise and things that want to come out at the same time through this funnel of my mouth where only one word can come out at a time. And doing a
there's
podcast,
traffic.
there's traffic, a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
and doing a podcast allowed me to listen to myself and be like, you know what, even though there's a lot of noise and I feel like it doesn't make sense when I talk, when I listen back to myself, it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like we're rusted on this because, Fran, I feel like, let's go, to me, you were answering everything that was making sense, just maybe there was a lot of noise in your head at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was my parenthesis, where you see like the way that we process information is always different for everybody, and then the way that it comes out might, like, we can't see ourselves all the time. So that was my tiny parenthesis. It's my love language.
Your love. Oh, geez. I'm so distracted. My microphone dropped. Anyway, no.
Too much love.
Exactly. Much love, especially. Hey, it was Valentine's Day 2 days ago. So
yeah.
there. But no, you are exactly right, because as I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm grateful for it, because it's almost like I'm listening to myself here, in the sense of all that you've mentioned in terms of whether it's motions, whether it's even what you said, Melissa, about talking. Number one is, especially given that English is your second language, so to speak, right? You're processing things differently, but the receiver of the information are the ones who are like, hey, English is my first language, and and some people just assume or expect you to learn that,
Mm-hmm.
to speak English, and that in itself is not inclusive, because you're not patient with the person who's actually giving you the information, right? And that's why I said this when we first spoke, when we first met, and then of course now, all I ever said was, even if something comes out in French, who cares, right? Because we understand. I leave it to the person for them to fully gauge what you're trying to say, because in the context of the conversation, they'll get it, right? Even if it's even if you just spurt out something en français, right? They'll understand it, right? But if they don't, and if they're the ones who are going to go back to us and say, oh, we don't understand what you're saying because you speak another language, that's not my problem. That's your problem, right? Plain and simple, right?
And
but I don't
if I
know,
can,
Melissa, you want to?
but I really want to circle back to your question, because I opened with a parenthesis, but what you're saying is making me go back to this crystal ball, or I can't say it's a crystal ball, but I guess it's a wish I'm throwing out there in the universe. And the work that we're doing with neuroinclusion is bringing it as like a prism where we can see it as a universal accessibility, universal inclusivity lens, where if we think in a neuro-inclusive way, we can do many strikes with one stone, if I can use the expression in English. I don't know if it works. Where
en français,
c'est ça, une pierre plusieurs coups. If you are able to think in a universally accessible way, if somebody comes in and the language that is used in the company is not their first language, and it's harder to access information, they might experience similar difficulties to somebody that has ADHD, because there is a translation going on at the same time. It takes mental bandwidth. When we talk about new employees that come into the workforce, like the youth, like they're not used yet to all those social codes, all those. And if you have and you think in your company to have accessible documentation that is well done, is going to help them as well. So seeing it as, it is an opportunity for the whole spectrum of diversity to feel included and welcomed into the workplace. So yes, neuroinclusion, but in this very universally accessible and inclusive way of thinking. This is where I feel like we can meet, where sometimes the D&I conversation is getting backlash, where we can bring back the line somewhere else to come back with it and make it more accessible for folks that are not understanding what's going on and feel like the world is changing so fast that they just like the elastic is breaking sometimes.
No, well said, Melissa. Well said. So I want to conclude this excellent, insightful, funny conversation with the both of you with a little bit of fun here, besides the crystal ball, which was what is the one song that gets you up every day? Either one of you, go ahead.
I told you I'm not disciplined, so you only have one song.
Go ahead. If it's 5, go ahead.
My motivational song is Vienna by Billy Joel, because this song, I don't know, it slows me down when I need, and it like motivates me when I need. But my other answer is that when I wake up in the morning, I love to listen to Tash Sultana, because Tash Sultana, they impress me by the way they're like a one-person band. By the way, it's really impressive, but also the music, I don't know, it fills my whole mind and body in a way that no other artists do. So Tash Sultana.
Melissa?
I don't get up with music. It's too much noise to try to like remember what to do, and like the morning is silence. So I guess silence is the music that gets me going in the morning. But if I need to get going during the day, I'm a big ABBA fan. Like ABBA gets me every time. Like it just makes me, it's my happy music.
Oh my gosh. No, No, that's both of them. Both of them are great choices for music, and hopefully our listeners will say, okay, I'm going to my Spotify list. I'm going to listen to ABBA. I'm going to listen to Tash Sultana and Billy Joel. So definitely that's it. So as we conclude, where can people find you?
We can be found on our website, nuance.com. So it's Nuense, because nuance written the proper way was taken, and it's too mainstream. We're different.
Yes, exactly.
We're so unique, exactly. We're not.
And you can find us easily on LinkedIn as well. I post a lot. I try to get Fran to post as well.
I don't.
Very undisciplined with this, but it's okay. She has other ways of, and we have a newsletter where this is where Fran really shines, and we're going to come up with more blog articles. So LinkedIn, nuance.com, and feel free to anybody that's listening and feel like they want to have a chat, like just feel free to reach out to us, and it's always our pleasure.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't bite.
No, right. It's just that every conversation is an adventure, as you saw.
That's what it is. It's all about adventures, and that's what I'm hoping that people will take into account and know that not every conversation is going to be the same. It won't go the same direction, but people are at the end of the day are going to be listening to what you have to say. And as I said before, I really appreciated all that I've learned from you. And all that you've spoken about from a cultural perspective to neurodiversity, neuroinclusion, and inclusive meetings. So I want to thank you both for being my guests today and being my guests, I should say. And yes, this was great. And thank you to both you, Fran and Melissa.
Much. Thank you for this conversation. It was good. My cheeks right now, so it's enough.
Too much smile.
That's all it is. You have that smile. Exactly. So, à bientôt. À tous.
Bientôt.
Yes, for sure.
And, and until next time, make sure you subscribe, share, and share this episode and on all the other episodes of the Global Conversations webcast. So we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.